Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here for today's BU Alumni Career Week's webinar, 5 Keys to Design the Second Half of Your Life. My name is Dan Gardner, and I'm a member of the Career Programs team here in the Office of Alumni Relations. Today's webinar is sponsored by Boston University Alumni Relations and is offered to our 326,000 alumni all around the globe. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. It's important that we get your opinion on how we're doing, so please be on the lookout for an Alumni Career Week survey that will be emailed to all of you at the end of the week. I know that we have alumni joining us today from places like Ontario, Canada, Rome, Italy, La Quinta, California, Dunwoody, Georgia, Cape Elizabeth, Maine, Cody, Wyoming, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like Somerville, Franklin, Medford, Amesbury, East Bridgewater, and many, many more. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really do value your opinion on this and every program that we offer. Now, before I introduce today's speakers, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on our Zoom online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of the presentation, please contact Zoom support at 1-888-799-9666. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni Association website found at bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions that you have, and you are welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A box. Just hover over the top or bottom of the screen and select Q&A. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, School of Public Health alumni Kelley Connors. Kelley is deeply passionate about empowering a whole being life, one that fuels well-being for midlife working men and women. Her design for her own life emerges from a tapestry of experiences in Europe in healthcare, in New York City as a communications consultant, and virtually as a digital content innovator for healthcare and well-being organizations. Her expertise and innovations have inspired her to be a positive psychology coach and a personal branding consultant in developing a signature coaching program, Design the Second Half of Your Life. As a work and well-being coach, she feels called to guide busy working women and men, especially those who feel they are not successful despite years of being a success at work, who find a gap exists between where they are and where they believe they should be, or those who are just retired and want a new beginning to their life's work. Kelley graduated from the BU School of Public Health in May 1988 and has done coursework in wellness coaching, mindfulness, and healthy aging as well. She's a member of the College Club of Boston, the Commonwealth Institute, and BU School of Public Health Industry Council. Now, Kelley will be doing an interactive self-reflection exercise during today's presentation, so hopefully you have a pen and paper handy to participate. Kelley, thank you so much for being here today, and the floor is all yours. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan, for the introduction and for the opportunity to speak here with my fellow alum from BU. I always enjoy networking and meeting people, so if you're so inspired, feel free to reach out to me after this presentation as well, just to say hello. But I'm delighted to be able to share what I've developed as a program for Design the Second Half of Your Life, and I bring it to individuals and to organizations. And I call it 5 keys because it's not a linear program. They're just 5 keys that we need to keep in mind as we choose to design the second half of our life. So in my career, I've had several different types of jobs in the career continuum, so to speak. They've all been related to healthcare and well-being. And of late, I've turned my skills into a coaching platform and communications consultant. But Design the Second Half of Your Life for me is very much a call to action. It's a call to action to celebrate our gifts and strengths as we build and really start to create a purposeful and, as a result, a joyful life moving forward. So Design the Second Half of Your Life is about possibility. It's also about even closer in with a lens that's much closer in around designing your next step. It doesn't have to be that you have to have this big vision on your life, as much as it might be more about what is the next step that you want to take. You may be in that position. But I like to say that Peter Drucker really was one person that inspired me when he said the only way to predict the future is to create it. And I know when we're in the second half of life, there's so many changes that happen. We may end up being caregiving for our parents. We may end up changing jobs only really for financial reasons. We may not enjoy the job. We may lose a job. We may be in a consideration phase for months about changing our job. And all this kind of creates some conflict and some unease with the future. So the only way to predict the future is to create it is one way of looking at the future and how you might interact. Another way to look at the future, which inspired me, was Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And I think this is, incredibly inspiring despite the circumstances and the context in which you wrote the book. But the book really is a meditation on the experience of what Auschwitz taught him and what it takes to have a purposeful life. And this is one of the keys that I'll go into further. The purpose actually is really the foundation for design the second half of your life. So you may be wondering at this point, is this webinar for me? Is it really going to fulfill the promise of designing the second half of your life? At this point, why don't we take a look at this poll that asks the questions, which of the following profiles most closely matches your current situation? And perhaps one of these really does call out to you. If it doesn't, feel free to use the chat and kind of just put it out there if you're so inclined as to where you might be and what you might be going through in terms of thoughts and feelings. But the first one is, the first choice is, I'm too busy and crazed to step off the hamster wheel and live well. I know that's a really common one for lots of people that I work with. The second one is, I feel disconnected from my own character strengths, gifts, and talents, and I'm seeking meaningful work aligned with me. I certainly understand that as well. We can feel really disconnected when we're not aligned with what comes easiest to us, what we feel most powerfully aligned with, and what is most, where we think we can make an impact with our own gifts. The third one is, I think I'm at the end of my life's work, but I'm afraid of a new beginning that opens new doors to share my purpose. This may be true for you if you're in your 50s, maybe in your late 40s, and you've really worked hard in your career. And at this point in your life, you're just wondering, is there a possibility for something new to share what I'm really about? The final one is that maybe this is you if you want more meaningful work, but you wonder if it's realistic. And by this, I mean, you wonder if it's realistically financially, if you can actually achieve your dreams. You just wonder if you could ever really have meaningful work. You may feel inspired by somebody else's pathway and think that, well, that's for them, but it's not for me. In other words, I don't deserve it. So that can be another aspect of you wonder if it's realistic. You wonder if you deserve it. You wonder if you could ever have that. Oh, this is wonderful. Results coming in right away. So I know who I'm speaking with. The most is, I feel disconnected from my own character strengths, gifts, and talents, and I'm seeking meaningful work aligned with me. I can totally relate to that. I have experienced that myself. And I can tell you that there's a pathway through that. The next one is, I want more meaningful work, but wonder if it's realistic. Yes, as I just mentioned, we wonder if it's realistic because we may not have the confidence to actually go for what's most meaningful for us. Or we may have barriers that we put in the way. They're self-limiting beliefs. The next one is, I'm too busy and crazed to step off the hamster wheel and live well. Yep, lots of people on the hamster wheel. We have bills to pay, college tuition to to finalize, and it does kind of feel like we're on the hamster wheel and we don't know how to get off. And the final one at 17% is, I think I'm at the end of my life's work, but afraid of a new beginning. That's totally realistic, totally understandable. And new beginnings require new ways of thinking. So as we go forward, you'll see how that comes into play as well. So these are all what we had just gone through. And the purpose of really designing your goal as part of the program is to fulfill a desire that emerges from your purpose. So I said earlier that Viktor Frankl's quote really rang true to me. And as I designed this program, I saw that purpose is really what we're going for, foundationally. And that's because this, I think, really says it well. When we think about our purpose, we start on an inner journey. It doesn't mean that we stay on an inner journey, but we have access to our inner resources that really allow us to connect with our gifts and our talents and our desires. And these fuel your purpose. So if an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. If broken by an inside force, life begins. Great things always begin from the inside. This is so true. And what really rings true for me is that so often in the midst of kind of changing my career over the last 10 years, I kept looking for a shiny object from the outside to kind of grab onto or attach to. And I think this is so human. We're looking for the path of least resistance in making changes or improving our life. And sometimes we look outside of ourselves to actually value what's outside of ourselves, when actually where we need to start and what we need to value is right inside us, our own resources, our passions, our purpose, what we see as possibility. This is an inner journey that allows us to actually get off the hamster wheel, so to speak. But the problem is that in taking this inner journey, we often come across our own demons, our own self-limiting beliefs, and we start to go down the rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole is a place, we all use this euphemism, the rabbit hole. It's a dark, windy place, and there's never a there. It's just a dark, windy place. It doesn't get you anywhere. It keeps you stuck. It keeps you living your own story. And in that situation, when we're kind of stuck and when we're in our story about what our life is really about and we ruminate, that's actually just the result of, again, our biology. Our brain is naturally inclined to fight or flight, fight, flight, or freeze. And as a result of that natural tendency to do what we've always done, to fear the saber-toothed tiger, we no longer need to do that. But the hormones that are running our brain, that are bathing our brain in status quo and familiarity, are actually stress hormones. We release stress hormones really easily. We live our life with stress hormones bathing our brain. And it takes action to change that. It takes action in the form of pausing and cultivating awareness. And at this point, you might be thinking, you mean like meditation? Well, it actually starts with a breath. It starts with taking a breath so that you can pause and stop the brain from moving forward into the same old pattern that says, you're not enough, you're too old, you're not experienced, you're too young, you're too tall, you're too short, you're not ready. You didn't study that. You're not an expert. It's too late. There's lots of things like that that keep us stuck, believing the inner critic. And that keeps us on the hamster wheel. But if we pause and we stop the chain reaction, and we make a different choice, a daily habit that's different, a new way of thinking, that then leads to new actions, we are able to respond. And we're able to actually shift the paradigm from reacting with our old rules, the story we create about ourselves, and the status quo, and go into a shift towards responding. So we shift from reacting to how we see our role in the world and our interactions with others to responding. And when you do that, you start to create new neural pathways in your brain. So the brain loves positivity. It loves dopamine and oxytocin, but it is wired for cortisol and the stress hormones. So we actually have to think something new to get that dopamine reaction going and the oxytocin flowing. We actually have to think first to then create an action that will result in dopamine. If you do that enough, the dopamine will automatically and much quicker in the cycle release itself into the brain, and you will start to change your habits that lead you to a more focused, passionate, and emotionally agile way of living or life's work. That's what my focus is all about, is creating, going from disengaged to passionate in your life's work. And this is very much a retraining of your brain. And you might think, wow, I mean, how am I ever going to do that? I just really want a new job. And I totally get that. But there are some self-limiting beliefs that we all have, and some of those, and we can go explore that a little bit later in this webinar, some of those self-limiting beliefs are what's getting in your way and keeping you stuck. But if all we need to do is take a moment to pause and have a positive thought, an empowering belief, then the dopamine will come out. It will be released in the brain. And that's what's actually going to help us feel better. So it's the thoughts, and then the actions, and then the daily habits. And the goal is a more focused way of being, more passionate about your life's work, even if you didn't change your job, and emotionally agile, being able to respond to situations as opposed to react. And when we respond, we're in the driver's seat. And being in the driver's seat is really important for designing the second half of your life. When you're a designer, you're the one who's in control of creation, of creating what's next, or creating your vision. And the components of design include being as opposed to doing, positivity as opposed to just reacting and being negative, and listening to our inner critic. Being positive requires having a vision for your future and really believing that you deserve it. And being positive also includes being generous with others, inspiring others. This is all part of designing the second half of your life. Stillness. Stillness is absolutely important. As I mentioned earlier, we need to pause to intercept that normal brain reaction and to stop it from reacting. We need to pause. We need to take a breath. We need to really be still in self-reflection. And the best leaders we know today, the CEOs of companies that are doing phenomenally well, one of their daily habits is self-reflection. It's really being still for at least 10 minutes a day. And in self-reflection, you journal about what your thoughts are in the moment, what you're aiming for. You shift your beliefs from being status quo and familiar, negative, limited, to positive. But it does require stillness. It requires detaching from a sense of needing to belong, because being alone is where you fuel this sense of possibility. It doesn't happen by attaching to other people or things. It happens in stillness and connecting to who you are. And then the final component, it's a component of design the second half of your life, is support. When we support ourselves with positive people, we are actually improving our health and well-being, And research studies at Harvard have shown in their School of Public Health have shown that social support is just as important as medicine and exercise in improving health, such as lowering blood pressure. So social support in the form of being surrounded by encouraging, positive, like-minded people is so important in how we live our life, especially if we want to be designers. To be a designer requires that you take more control of your environment, the people around you, and you relax into who you are. And that's only possible in safe environments. It's not to say that you'll never be challenged by other people, but this component of designing your life requires really excellent support, and social support specifically, inspired conversations with other people who are aligned and who can support you. Not necessarily being a cheerleader, but being able to witness who you are. So with that as the components of design, there are 5 tools that will help you on your pathway to designing the second half of your life. And I keep saying second half, but lots of people that I work with are actually not just in their second half, they're in their third. So it means they're in their late 60s, mid to late 60s, maybe late 50s. I mean, we really don't know when our second half of life is, but it's at some point beyond your late 30s and early 40s. Self-assessment, knowing your strengths. This is really important, to be able to do a self-assessment, to know your strengths. And from there, you can start to build and to detect your purpose, because your purpose is embedded in your strengths. A journal and pen for self-reflection daily. Clean, decluttered space for quietness and for really not being distracted. A meaningful action plan. I work with my clients on a meaningful action plan, which is a lot different than the traditional goals and a timeline plan. It's different than having SMART goals. A meaningful action plan identifies what your intentional actions are going to be, what you're going to let go of, or what rule you're going to break in order to achieve the intentional action, and who you're going to connect with or be supported by. So it's a very specific way of getting at meaning and purpose in your life and taking action based on that. And then the final design tool is inspired conversations around your story. So not just complaining about your life and what happened in the past and who did what to whom and all these things that we ruminate about and allow us to stay limited and not going for what really matters for us, because we think that our story is really who we are, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's just not true. Your story is just a story that you have told yourself in a certain way that leads to a predominant belief and understanding, but self-limited around your future. So the 5 steps or keys to designing your second half of life are, I've noted them here as steps, and they can be mixed and matched in any which way depending on where you are in your life and what's most important to move you forward. But I'm going to give you kind of a linear way of thinking about it because it'll make the most sense. And once you practice this, you'll really understand how to use these particular steps in the process. So the first step is tune in. And tuning in means actually getting out of your head and feeling what's most important to you, detecting what's most important to you. Being a detective requires inquiry, and inquiry are questions. The questions you ask are more important now than knowing answers. It's your ability to ask questions. For example, when we talk about tuning in, it's what's shifted for you in the past few months, maybe a couple years. What are you looking forward to as far as new beginnings in your life's work or in your community? What do you envision as your big vision, what you love to do? A lot of people don't know what they love to do. They don't know what their purpose is, and that's perfectly fine. The program doesn't, or this process doesn't require that you know that. It requires that you ask questions, which will help you detect what you envision as your big vision in your life, or what you love to do. You know, one of the most important things that I work with my clients on is just sitting still, listening to music, and just writing what comes up for them. Beautiful music like harp music and piano. Chopin has beautiful music that really is inspiring and allows you to relax, and you can actually start to tap into what you love to do. You don't have to know an answer. You just have to be in the inquiry for now, for tuning in, how your body feels as opposed to what you're thinking. What are your strengths? So what do you feel your strengths are? Where have you had success in the past that you would love to replicate again? So moving forward in your life isn't necessarily about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's integrating your past in a way that builds your strengths. And then the final is, what's your purpose? This is kind of something that we kind of ask ourselves every day in self-reflection. We tune in and, really it helps us align our actions. What's your purpose? It doesn't necessarily relate to your role in life as a mother, as a teacher. What's your purpose is really related to what your gifts are and how you share them in the world. But tuning in, really important. And then, of course, there's letting go or breaking your own rules. By the time we're in our late 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, we are ready to clean the house and to get unstuck from things that keep us just running in circles. And letting go of your story, letting go of your old rules that used to serve you, that may no longer serve you, and understanding what your shoulds are as opposed to what your coulds be. Could is about possibility. Shoulds are about expectations and obligations. And we all know that when we start to transition our life stage from really focusing on the kids and caregiving, or your parents caregiving, we may be released from some of our roles and obligations. Sometimes we actually have to start them again in the second half of life. So it's not like, one and done, but it's more about thinking how you can break these rules that have kept you possibly ignoring and denying yourself the benefit of your gifts, your strengths, and how you want to share them in the world. So your rules can be something that worked in the past. Like I said, they can be something like, I've been working hard and working long hours for security in the future. Well, we all know that the world is changing at such a rapid pace that to work for the future is not really going to help us in the present to have a really good frame of well-being. It may even be against our own health. We may be working at such a pace for the future that we ignore our present day health. So letting go of these rules that keep us bound and that don't serve our well-being any longer are really important. So if we're going to let go of our old rules, how do we then move forward with some guidance as to, what do we attach to? What do we hold on to that helps us move forward in a positive way? And that's happens when we shift to empowering beliefs. So empowering beliefs are affirmations, and they originate in our mind. They come from our mind, our consciousness. And this is where all possibility begins. And you can study the work of Deepak Chopra and people that are much more researched in the area of quantum physics, but everything that's possible and that's dynamic starts in our mind. Usually this is something that we just take for granted. What goes on in our mind is just what goes on in our mind. But think about these. I've listed a few things here that may help you shift from the hamster wheel to a more expansive life that's filled with possibility. If you think about your intentions and how they fuel your purpose, so thinking about what's the purpose of your life, that's an empowering belief. Having self-compassion and using inquiry instead of labeling setbacks as failure. Expanding your capacity for resilience and change in life. Asking questions of others first and listening with a focus and witness on others. Sharing yourself with others, inspiring others. Discerning your inner critic from your inner mentor. I do a lot of work on this. It's very deep work that helps you listen more closely to your inner mentor, who this voice doesn't actually dominate your mind. It's the inner critic that does. You have to actually ask your inner mentor to come into your life and to guide you. But it takes an invitation. Take 15 minutes a day to meditate or walk in silence, and you will, when you connect with nature and you get the dopamine going, you will actually be able to think more positive, empowering thoughts. Say yes to what fills you up and helps you share your gifts wisely. Use your intuition to guide you as opposed to just looking at intelligence, because I'm talking about knowledge specifically, but your intuition. Use your intuition as intelligence to guide you. That's better said. Use your intuition as intelligence to guide you. Use your heart to signal what matters most to your brain. So use your heart, feel your heart center, and know what matters most, and that will signal to your brain. Collaborate to build a support network. So the world today is all about collaboration, and this is actually very supportive of well-being in your life. So the third step is to clarify your purpose and align your actions with your purpose. Now that you've tuned in, you've broken your own rules, you've cleared a pathway to what you want to create, and then you are really going into an inquiry. What do I want to create? It's not what job do I want, but what do I want to create? What problem do I want to solve? Who do I want to serve? How can I be my purpose? So asking these questions allows you to create a pathway to daily actions that can help you in that paradigm shift from reacting to responding and creating your future. The fourth step is to be brave and heart-centered. So the word that I think of when I think of bravery and heart-centered is courage. And just like Viktor Frankl said, courage is something that helps us get through difficult times. It can also help us go for risks, go for some small stepwise risks that you otherwise, unless you thought of it this way, as having courage, you might not take those steps, and that would keep you in your self-limiting beliefs. So by identifying 3 risks over the next 30 days that you can take, can move you forward into a possibility, a new possibility, will help you continue to break your own rules. So the risks are ways of expanding your confidence, of looking at what you thought was impossible and seeing a glimmer of hope, of possibility. So you might start thinking about that. Where do you need courage in your life, and what risks can you take? And the 5th step is shining your own light. That's just a very accessible way of talking about really understanding what you want to share with people. Again, it goes to your purpose, but you have to be the one that reaches out to connect with people who align with your purpose. And shift from scarcity or I'm not enough in that limited thought, the reactive mindset, to one of gratitude. Gratitude is expansive, and it's an accelerator in our life. It helps us reach our goals more if we're grateful for what we have done, what we've accomplished in the past, and what we can celebrate. So shining your own light is just as much about celebrating who you are in a more expansive way than it is sounds like possibly a communications tactic, which it can also be. So going from understanding what your gifts are to sharing them, and then using a really tangible platform to share your gifts, share your voice, share who you are and what's most important. And LinkedIn can be a great platform for doing that. And I help people do this all the time, is create communication tools using LinkedIn that help them reach other people in an authentic way that's inspiring and really creates an opening for the other person to connect. And this is where there's just a lot of juice and possibility exists, shining your own light, connecting with others, influencing others by knowing and sharing your gifts. So I think you've gotten the drift by now that a lot of this is very intuitive. And I think in the first half of life, we're really building a knowledge base and a skill base that helps us lead our life to where we are today. But going forward, the tools that we really want to use are more about using your intuition to guide you. And this is where possibility is. It's a pathway that requires more focus, more awareness, mindful awareness on your part, more tuning in, more action that is counterintuitive, but actually results in taking this inner journey and using your intuition to guide you as intelligence. So I thought what we might do now is try a guided meditation, a reflection, self-reflection, whatever you call it, to relax. And one of the things that I didn't mention yet is how important relaxation is to stopping that cortisol, the bad hormones that keep us stuck, and to releasing the good hormones like dopamine and oxytocin. And when we have those good hormones bathing our brain and releasing into our body, that's actually where we're able to make more conscious, more intentional choices and thoughts and positive affirmations. When we're not relaxed, we go for same old, same old. We go for status quo, what's familiar. We may be thinking about what time it is, and we kind of write answers in our self-reflection just to get through the exercise. So I hope when I guide you through this that you'll really be able to relax and tune into what's most important to you. So at this point, we'll just do 5-10 minute guided meditation here. I think I have time. Yep, I have a little bit of time. If you could just sit in your chair, or if you're on a couch, just sit, put your feet flat on the floor, your hands on your lap, and just think about relaxing. Just think about nothing. Just relax, but don't try hard to relax. Just start with your body. Focus on your shoulders first. Kind of relax your shoulders. Let your shoulders drop down. Lightly close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And then notice your breath. Just kind of notice how you're breathing. And when I do this, I'm breathing in through my mouth, breathing out through my nose. You can also, when you lightly close your lips, you can just breathe in and out through your nose. Notice the breath, the cool air going in your nose, the warmer breath going out. And you just drop your shoulders. Don't worry about how you're breathing. Just notice the breath. Keep focusing on that kind of corner of your nostril. Focus on that breath going in and out. Let your cheeks relax. Let your tongue relax. Let your eyes sink into your eye sockets. Let's see if you can get your shoulders just kind of Slide down your back more. Release the tension in your back. Know that you are firmly planted here. Let gravity sink you into your seat. And you're in a safe space. Notice the breath going in your nose and out. Let's see if you can focus on that little corner of your nose as the breath goes in and out. Let your body embrace the breath. Feel the breath with your whole body. Feel the breath inside your chest and feel it even out in your back. Use your breath to relax your lower back and bring your breath up through your shoulders. Relax your shoulders. Keep breathing. Just keep your awareness on your breath. If you have a thought that comes into your mind, just let it go like clouds in the sky. Release any self-judgment you have for what you're doing. You're doing it absolutely perfectly. And wherever you are is where you are. It's perfect. You're not your story. Your consciousness. And your being here is all you need. You're perfect the way you are. Can you notice yourself relaxing a little bit more? Relax your forehead. See if you can release some of the tension on your forehead. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Notice how your body's feeling in a relaxed state. Feel the spaciousness opening up inside your body. Feel that spaciousness. Release the tension through your breath. Bring your breath to anywhere now in your body where you're feeling tension. Direct your breath to that point. And now start to wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. Start to blink your eyes open. And take your pen or pencil and your paper and answer the question, what is your purpose? What gift do you want to share with the world? What is your purpose? What is the gift you want to share with the world? Or your family? Or the workplace? Or your community? What is that gift that you would like to reveal to others and share? Without too much thinking, just write what comes to you. You don't have to have a perfectly crafted purpose or mission statement. Just write what comes to you. Write about your gifts that you want to share with the world. Maybe you had a gift and you feel like you're no longer using it or sharing it. What is that gift? What have people told you you're awesome at? Maybe you forgot. Maybe you forgot what you love about yourself. What you love about yourself is an opening to your gift. And then just write a couple words here. What gets in the way of you living your purpose in life and work? It could be whatever comes to you. It could be time, money, lack of support, lack of clarity, negative mindset. What is it that you see that gets in the way of you living your purpose in life and work? Whatever you have at this point is just perfect. I hope you keep that paper. If you'd like to share it with me at the end, I'll give you my address and we can communicate. But this is really for you. This is a sacred self-reflection that can help you understand where you are now in your journey and perhaps shine a light on where you want to go. If I can help you in any way, I do small group coaching online and I call them possibility circles. So you take wherever you are right now, and if you have a project that you'd like to work on, or you're completely in the dark with how to create possibility and to move forward to design the second half of your life, I can help. We have these, I host monthly possibility circles and we meet online in Zoom, just like we're doing now. And we use a meaningful action plan to nurture your possibility and go from disengaged to passionate in your life work. On April 22nd, I'm hosting a women's well-being mini retreat with Dr. Sarika Arora on Newbury Street. And it's another opportunity. It's a 4-hour mini retreat called Unlock Your Inner Wisdom. And in the fall, I host my annual Martha's Wellbeing Weekend on Martha's Vineyard. And this year I have a special guest who's a 30-plus year creative director for a major advertising agency and who will lead us in a special journey called Inspire Your Inner Artist. And creativity is highly important, inspirational, and helps us clarify, actually. The act of creativity helps us clarify our design as we move forward in the second half of life. So it's a mindfulness leadership weekend for people who are leaders or aspiring leaders, want to change something about their leadership style moving forward. Most leaders are artists at heart, and this is a weekend to inspire your inner artist. And before we move to Q&A, here's how you can contact me and look up on the web for more information about how we might work together. And thank you very much. Look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Kelley. I can say that I really enjoyed the meditation exercise. I think we should do that every day during our lunch breaks. So thank you again for your presentation. We do have a couple questions coming in, but I would also encourage anyone out there, if you have questions, just go ahead and hover over the screen and you'll see a Q&A button, and you can go ahead and send those in to us. But let's get things started. We have a question from Deb, and she's looking for examples on how you encourage folks to use LinkedIn to shine your light. What does that actually look like in practice?
Great question. Well, LinkedIn is a wonderful tool, and I think it's underutilized by most people. So first of all, it requires us to be clear on what we're offering and to whom. So I get very down to brass tacks in terms of creating that profile page with a summary and uploading your work that you feel most proud of, and at what you want to share. It also includes working together to brainstorm articles that you could write or little blog posts that you could put up on a regular basis. So as a social media networking opportunity, my communications background helps people do that. And I think importantly, when we talk about shining your light, it's about how we can influence and inspire others. So how we write this profile page on LinkedIn, the headline and the summary is really important. And I can help you do that, as well as reach out and find people that might be aligned with what you're, who you might want to serve and what you might want to do.
Great, and I think I have another question that's right in line with that. Ellen's asking, once we determine some possible ideas for our purpose, how do you suggest we find jobs and fields that actually will employ those skills?
Oh, that's a great question. So, you know, a purpose is pretty broad and it's very expansive. It's a big container because, you know, as we know, our jobs change frequently, our roles change, and that's sometimes those are in our control or they're not in our control. So when I think about you know, how we're going to use our purpose, that our purpose is really how we're being. And we can take any job out there, and it's how we present ourselves, how we are being our purpose in that situation that'll make all the difference. You can go for a job interview and it can be exactly fitting your resume to a T and your skills, but if you're not able to convey your purpose and something that inspires the person that you're trying to influence, it doesn't really matter that you're a perfect fit. So I think it really really speaks to the importance of knowing your purpose and being able to talk about it in a way that's inspiring and that does apply to jobs. And we can, that is really kind of looking at it from a big picture, you know, the purpose being a big container and then drilling down and being able to align it with jobs. And that is totally possible. Almost any job that you would be interested in would align with your purpose. It's a question of how you talk about it and how you are being in that interview process. That's authentic.
Great. I do have a follow-up question here from someone named Joni. Joni asks, do you recommend posting content to Medium? And I think this speaks to the blog concept that you brought up in terms of, you know, writing about the things that matter to us and telling our story. Where would you recommend folks publish that content?
I think Medium is great. I think it's got a lot of credibility out there. I use LinkedIn as kind of my starting point. And you can publish on Pulse and use tags and people can find you. So that's kind of like the base. And then take what you have put on LinkedIn and see if you can adapt it to what's trending on Medium. I love Medium. I'd like to use it more, actually.
Great. And I'm going to combine a question here. So Michael is asking for if you can illustrate some of the principles and steps with examples or case studies. And one of the items that we have another question on is that risk-taking. So do you have an example of anyone that you've worked with who was able to really weigh the cost of the path dependency, you know, sticking with the status quo and saying, you know, it's worth it to take this risk to make this jump to better live my purpose. Do you have any case studies that come to mind?
Sure. Well, most recently I worked with a senior PR executive for a major nonprofit, a major PR agency in the city. And she had been working there for like 8 years and gotten into kind of a rut in terms of this is my role, even though I'm a senior, you know, managing director, these are the expectations that have been set for me. This is what I'm supposed to do. But, you know, things change over time. And there were a lot of other things that we had found out through our conversations together where there were openings for new possibilities. She just hadn't articulated them or thought about them in kind of an inquiry. So in our coaching session, what we revealed is that what would make her life more fulfilling is not a different job, but it's really going into the current job and reestablishing some boundaries around time. And so since she was senior and had been worked there for so many years, I had to kind of give her some perspective on the fact that she has a lot of leverage. You know, she has leverage to not be afraid of losing your job. You've done, you know, she had no dings on her performance, and people loved her, and they were just expecting her to keep working the hamster wheel, but she was giving up a lot in her life. So the risk that we decided that we would take is for her to enter into a different conversation with the owners of the company, who were her boss, and to talk to them about what was most important to her and how she thought she could add value to the company while reducing her hours in the office and shifting to home, flex time at home. If she didn't have that 1 or 2 days, I'm not sure how much she negotiated, but those 1 or 2 days of non-commuting to Boston, everybody knows how stressful the train commute is, and that was zapping her of the ability to enjoy her job. She was just exhausted and felt like she was constantly going in and out on the train, dealing with commuting issues, and she actually had this conversation. Now, for her, it was a risk. She felt, this is all, you know, for me, it just seemed like, oh, this is so obvious, but I'm the outside person, right? I'm not the person that feels the risk, but I definitely was able to guide her in taking the conversation from the value that she's adding, and to be able to do that even more with more of a flex time schedule. And she's loving it. So much more freedom, so much more spaciousness, less, and I wouldn't say anxiety, but frustration at feeling like she is just constantly working. And she had a lot of resentment around that.
That's great. I think that's a perfect example. So thank you for sharing that story. We've got a couple more really great questions that I do want to get to. This one from Taylor. What if we have more ideas for things than so we would like to do than we can realistically accomplish? And then when choosing to pursue something that we truly love and are passionate about, can you talk about how to deal with the possibility that the reality of doing that thing might be disappointing or tedious compared to the fantasy or dream of the thing that we really love?
Oh yeah, that's a wonderful question. So first, you know, ideas are great, right? Ideas give us choices. They expand our capacity for living our best life. If we have choices, going for the first thing that comes to our mind is rarely a good idea. If we decided, for example, that we wanted to own and run a deli, a deli or some kind of retail shop, wouldn't it be nice to take a little bite-sized step and work in that situation before you take the big step to owning this retail shop or owning the deli or just taking a small step to get you, almost like using your time in an internship or an exploratory pilot way would be a better way to go. But back to the ideas, it is important to generate a lot of ideas, and those ideas are best done when you're in a circle of other people that can help you generate. Usually you can't do that on your own. You get a much broader and more positive experience when you're with other people who say, well, have you ever thought about X? So that's part of what we do in these possibility circles is mind mapping. And we expand options for people, because really is the first one you come up with the right one. And then, as I said, taking a small step to understand if that's the path. Don't jump in wholeheartedly. Take a small step. It may end up being a side hustle for you for a little while, or kind of like an internship or a gap year before you make that full commitment.
All right, and I'll do just one final question as we come up on the top of the hour. Sherry asks, how receptive are companies to hiring boomers, making that career change, or returning to full-time employment after a decade plus of freelancing or consulting? Can you speak to that a little bit in your experience?
Sure. Well, I have been in that position over 10 years of consulting and coaching. Prior to that, I was employed full-time for 20 years. So this is definitely something that I've experienced. I was able to use my communication skills in kind of through LinkedIn, through newsletters, through my communications business, and my network, most importantly. and I was offered a full-time job doing what I do, bringing that into somebody's company. So I think you have to demonstrate your value. You have to be able to talk about it in a way that completely aligns with your future employer or your future possibilities. And all this is, the possibility is emerges when you actually start to work your network and build a network and feel confident, and you're confident from clarity around what your purpose is, what your value is. It's really what your value is. When you come down to that specific question, it's around the value and aligning with your future employees. So I feel optimistic about hiring boomers. I've seen the data around the Center at Boston College for Aging and Work has some interesting data that shows that people in their 50s and 60s are definitely gainfully employed, and sometimes they're in transition. They may be full-time up until their early 60s, and then there's a transition plan where they wane their hours. But jumping back in after being a consultant or a coach takes a real strong focus on value, messaging, outreach. It does take some elbow grease and some support.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We have a couple last-minute questions, people who are looking for slides, dates of some of the opportunities, and we will send a follow-up email with the resources that Kelley has talked about. So be on the lookout for that message with takeaways and all that good stuff. So thank you again, Kelley, for taking the time to share with our audience, with the Alumni Association, your expertise, and I wish the best of luck to everyone out there who is looking to design that next step, and I wish courage for you as you begin to think about following your passion. I also want to thank all of our guests for participating today, especially those who have donated to BU in the past. We couldn't put on programs like this without your support. We've got 3 more great webinars coming up in March and the beginning of April as part of our annual Alumni Career Week series, where we have over 60 career events taking place online and in cities around the world. I hope you'll join me for some of these great activities, and you can sign up at bu.edu/careerweeks. As always, if you or any BU alumni that you know would be interested in presenting a professional development webinar or have a topic you'd like to showcase for the BU Alumni Association, please feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at dangard, DANGARD, @bu.edu. Thanks everyone for your time, and I hope you have a great day or a great evening wherever you may be.